introduce my co-teacher, who happens to be my amado esposo, my beloved husband, Jack. Yes, it's always a good time.
Thank you, dear. So,
Yeah, you want to say hello?
Yeah, I do. I want to say a little bit. First of all, I am just so happy to be here with you. And I look around and I see people. Oh, I know you and you and you and you. And it just feels so great to be both back in this space and back together with community. And it's something, after all the little squares, hi, we love you, and it's really nice to be back together. And I hear us clapping, and I think about this little story of a 7 or 8-year-old girl, Carmen. She went out to the park with her mom in Seattle, and she got a present of a new jump rope. And so she was trying to learn how to jump rope. It's kind of difficult. And then her teacher, Miss Jennifer, walked by, was out in the park, and greeted the mom. And Miss Jennifer was young enough as a teacher to say, oh, let me show you how to do jump rope. So she was sort of teaching Carmen how to do it. And Carmen started, and then they began to clap like you all did for one another and all that. And after a while, they clapped enough, and she could do jump rope. And so she took her jump rope and went off to play. Miss Carmen and Mom were teaching, and she came back about 5 minutes later, dragging the jump rope, and she said, Mommy, I can do it, but I need lots of clapping. And I think there's something about coming together. Yes, we can do it at home. Yes, we can do it on the screen. Thank you for joining us. It's beautiful. And there's something about being able to support one another, especially in this crazy world, which it's kind of demonstrating craziness in case someone had sort of not noticed that. It's got unbearable beauty and wackiness, and we need this. We need to clap for one another, to respect one another, to make a place where we can practice these trainings that steady the life, our life, because otherwise you're like a boat without a rudder and you get pulled around in this society by all the different forces. And here we get to center ourselves and see in a different way with compassion, steadiness, love, wisdom, all those things. What a beautiful way to come together. So thank you, my beloved.
Juan, could I have a glass of water? Thank you. Just seeing old faces and people who've been here volunteering in different roles forever, it's a great joy to be here. And so actually let's meditate together now. We'll begin with meditation. And I want to encourage you, find a posture that's right for your body. Many of you have received instructions on how you're supposed to have your body. And so just ignore those and find the way that your body wants to sit. Because if you're not comfortable, you're not comfortable. And then it's hard to relax. Oh, thank you so much. Thanks. So just making yourself comfortable in whatever way your body wants. Actually, my feet would like to be on a cushion, thank you, as long as no one's there. Great. Yeah, because everybody's body is different, and we really want to be sensitive to the needs of my particular body. We usually begin our meditations eyes closed, eyes looking down. Some people like their eyes open. I know Pepe likes his eyes open. But we usually begin by taking 3 deep breaths. Take a deep breath in and releasing, relaxing. And one more time, a deep breath in, and releasing any tension as you breathe out. And then letting the breath move in its own natural rhythm. Sensing and feeling the sensations that come with the movement of the breath in the body. Movements of expansion and contraction. Along with the ebb and flow of the breath in the body. And you can imagine your breath flowing down to about 2 inches below your belly button. And you can place your hands on your lower belly, on your womb if you have one. And just focusing on this energy center in the lower abdomen. This area traditionally called the hara in Japanese or the dantian in Chinese martial arts, the energy garden, the womb. And right below the umbilical cord place that attached us to our mothers. And now it's like an ongoing connection to the Mother Earth, and all our ancestors. And I want to invite you, if you feel like it, just to very, very gently, as you breathe in, gently rock your pelvis back. Very slowly, very gently. As you breathe out, just letting it rock very gently forward. And just very gently, slowly rocking your tailbone back as you breathe in and forward. as your belly moves in toward your spine. It could be barely perceptible movement. And then resting in stillness. And whenever you notice that your mind has drifted back into the past or is imagining the future, just gently shifting your body back just a half an inch or an inch into this posture of receptivity. Just sitting, stepping back a little to receive this moment. To receive this breath. No need to tip forward to look for the next moment or to try to remember the last one. Just leaning back and receiving this breath and this particular moment in all eternity. Just feeling the pleasant relief of letting your shoulders relax down, jaw relax. And whenever you're distracted by a train of thought, again, just gently moving back just a half an inch to receive each breath. Breathing in the aliveness of this moment, receiving the gift of presence you're offering to yourself. And then breathing out, letting it all just dissolve into this open space of awareness. And whatever is happening for you, however it is for you, just sprinkling a little tenderness so that the mindfulness, the mindful awareness, so that it's really a loving awareness. Just life in the form of this moment, however it is. There's so many things that I want to share with you this morning. Might have to do some, might have to put some of it to next week. I have lots of notes, and I'm having my notes also. Some of you know I went on retreat in Costa Rica, and unbeknownst to me, I had an infection when I got there, and anyway, I was alone in a very rural area, and I got really sick. And I'm better, of course. I survived, and I'm recovering. But Jack and I could not stop laughing because I still have to go to the doctor, and I went to the doctor, and one of the questions that I was asked is, "Oh, hi, do you have brain fog?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, actually, I think I have brain fog." And he said, "Oh, that's okay. Everyone has brain fog." So I don't know if I was supposed to feel better or my doctor has brain fog. Anyway, so I have my notes with me just in case. But I don't know, did we deliberately plan this to be on Easter? We didn't. But it's so appropriate, really. I'm trying to learn Spanish. Pepe, where's Pepe? ¿Dónde está Pepe?
You
Oh,
went
he
to
had to
church.
leave. Well, it's Easter. Pepe is my maestro teaching me Spanish, and so I've been listening to Spanish radio. My sister was like, "You should listen to Spanish." So I've been listening to this radio station it's the Virgin Guadalupe radio station. So of course I'm listening to all these prayers and everything in Spanish. And so I'm very aware of Easter in a way that, I'm not Catholic, I'm Jewish, Jewish Buddhist, but I hadn't been. And yeah, I know. Jack always quotes Ram Dass saying, "I'm only Jewish on my parents' side." But then I found some teachings of the Buddha that are really relevant to Easter. And the Buddha taught, it really was it's a very popular sort of natural image for a time of renewal or rebirth, is, eggs, chickens and eggs. And when he was speaking once to a Brahmin priest, a priest from the Hindu tradition, he was trying to sort of capture the immediacy of his experience of awakening. And he said that he felt like he was an egg-born being, a being that had, like a baby chick, broken through its shell and emerged. And it's a beautiful image because in some ways that's what we come here to do, to break out of our shells of separation and of our various neurotic hang-ups, to come into a much, much more peaceful and inclusive experience of what this self is and can be when we're not lost in, our preoccupied thinking about ourselves. And so here the Buddha is calling the shell ignorance, which in Buddhist practice and psychology, most of you know, ignorance doesn't mean not knowing stuff. It really means ignoring who we most truly are, ignoring what reality really is, because again, we're kind of in our shell. And he compared to his post-awakening life, he said, it's like a life of compassionate action. Because when that chick hatches from the shell, the mother takes careful, tender care of that fuzzy little being for a while. And we can think of our meditation practice, he said, sitting on, properly warming, and properly hatching the eggs. And we're doing this out of our compassion for all the living beings of the world, starting usually with ourselves and our own suffering. That's the best place to start because it's really authentic and very real, to help us emerge from the ways that, our clarity gets covered over. Our clarity and our ability to live with loving awareness, to live from our hearts. There's a beautiful quote from a Theravada teacher named Deepa Ma who went through terrible suffering in her life. She lost her husband, she lost a child. She really didn't want to live. She was in such deep grief. It's a woman who lived in Calcutta in the last century. And I guess one of her friends said, go to a meditation retreat. She was in such bad shape, she had to like crawl up the steps. We know that feeling figuratively of arriving at a retreat and just crawling up the steps to get there. And anyway, she became this amazing practitioner, and she came to Massachusetts. I was living there, but I was a Zen student there, but Jack can tell you he met her. I never met her, but she said for our practice, which I think is a really good foundation for our practice, she said, the first thing is to love yourself. We have classes on that here, self-compassion classes, because we kind of have to learn to love ourselves. It doesn't make sense, but there we are. Just our conditioning makes it hard to love ourselves. And she says you can't really progress by self-doubt and self-hatred. And most of us, our default setting, I mean, I've worked with thousands and thousands really of people over a long life of being a psychotherapist and a meditation teacher. And if there's one common thread, I think it would be how hard we are on ourselves, how hard people are on themselves. And then, of course, if you're that hard on yourself, it's axiomatic that we treat other people the way we treat ourselves, at least when we get close to them. And so that's another reason. She said you can only progress by self-love. So I like this image of the chick and the egg, because I feel it's sympathetic, it's sympathetic to what it's like. When you sit in the teacher's seat, you're like the mother hen kind of tapping on the shell from the outside. And, when I'm immersed in my practice, then I'm the baby chick, tapping on the shell from the inside. And they both have to happen for that shell to break. And we can feel, I mean, we can feel that sense of being in the shell, that sort of small, compressed, suffering feeling of yourself. And then that wish to be free, that just wish to break free, that's why we're here, all of us together, besides celebrating the opening of Olympic. And here, this was, again, from the Buddha. He said, oh, that my heart may be free and unbound, that I may know the release from all clinging. And the cool thing about this is that even if you don't take care of your eggs properly, it doesn't matter what your meditation is like, if you just sit there, they'll stay warm. They'll hatch whether you want them to or not. The hen doesn't have to want the eggs to hatch. If she just sits there, they're going to hatch. And it's the same with us. If we do these practices of mindful awareness, following the Eightfold Path, developing compassion, tuning into our brain belly here, our gut instincts, trusting our intuition, trusting our instincts, it will happen. Whether it happens where the shell breaks and you have an aha insight moment, or just some of us, it's more little by little without actually noticing any big, huge experience. It's more maybe like the experience of molting. If you've ever watched a snake molt, it's like they just squirm little by little out of their old skin. Or like hermit crabs. My daughter had hermit crabs as pets. We were living in an apartment where we couldn't have pets. But hermit crabs, if you look at them closely, when they outgrow their shell, they have to leave that shell and find a new one. And that's a really vulnerable time. That's when a seagull, any kind of bird can just come and pick them and eat them. And so they kind of scurry to try and find that new shell. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm in a vulnerable life transition, I'm definitely wanting to scurry into that next shell, right? It's hard to be vulnerable and to be open. But luckily here, we don't have predators waiting, except in our minds, waiting to swoop down, swoop down and bother us. So yeah, that was, to me, that was also very freeing, that to remember that, this clarity, this goodness, this compassion, this wisdom, it actually is innate in us. We just don't, it gets too covered up and we don't trust it. And so the idea that if you just keep practicing, it will happen is very appealing. You don't have to make it happen. Most of us have worked hard all our lives. It's not something we have to make happen or create in that way. It's a natural process. And we're all sitting on our eggs, and we're the eggs, and we're the chicks, and we're the hens, and it's just a natural process. And I think it's reassuring to know that just by working with these practices, it will happen, just by doing the practice. And that's why I think in Soto Zen, they say, their great teacher Dogen Zenji said, practice is enlightenment. And you're sitting there and you're restless, and maybe you're itching, and maybe you're, in a deep, deep fantasy. And it doesn't feel like enlightenment, does it? In those moments. So I think this is what he meant, that practice is enlightenment because it works in us. It just works in us, whether we see it and believe it or not. I know I have to leave some room for Jack to talk, but I'm just so happy to be here. Look, I have so much to share with you. Oh gosh, okay. Just the fact that this happens, whether we're aware of it or not, I think that's a very central message of what I want to share with you today. And also, as I had to face, in the summer when InsightLA definitely took a deep nosedive, kind of crashed into the ocean. And I want to just deep, deep thanks to Melissa. She's very, I'm serving as ED right now. She saved our butt. And I want you to know that she served as ED. Yeah. And she served as ED pro bono for months. And this is not like, a super wealthy woman who is just looking for a pet project. I mean, she really, she just gave.
And it does seem fitting that it's Easter and it will be Passover and it's this season of renewal. So a couple of things to add to what Trudy was saying. In some way we meditate kind of to keep it simple because it's a way to quiet the mind, that crazy instrument we have, to quiet the mind and to tend the heart, so that we can live, as Trudy was saying, with some greater graciousness and wisdom and understanding, especially in a culture that is almost defined by the absence of the sacred in a lot of ways. It's such a busy, speedy, consumer-oriented, get this, do that, complete this. To be able to stop. I hear sirens and I do metta. Whatever your problem is, may you be safe, and well, may you be all right. Who's ever there. So we quiet the mind and quiet ourselves so we can listen deeply and live from a different place that's not just on automatic. So I was in the Miami airport some years ago, and a guy came up to me and he said, "Jack," it happens once in a while, and I said, "Hi." He said, "Remember me? I sat a long retreat with you in 1978. Well, okay, wait, we've all gotten older, okay. What's your name? Oh, yeah, I think I do. Oh, my memory, whatever. Okay. And he said, well, I didn't think I was a very good practitioner. I did that, and I did some retreats and things like that, and I just got busy in my life. But last year, I had a major heart attack, and they were wheeling me. I was in the hospital, and they were prepping me for major surgery." He said, and it all came back. I didn't think that I'd, really learned something And that's where I went. I had all that capacity to center and be present and to be open. And with, he said, and it was physical pain and fear and all that. And my practice was there. And he said, I just want to thank you. I said, of course, you hatched yourself, whatever, you did good. But I say it because, yes, it's good to quiet ourselves and kind of live from our own values. In the deepest way to practice is to be able to live well and die well, to love fully, to be present for life, and to be not afraid. And not afraid doesn't mean you won't be afraid, by the way. I was talking with Ram Dass about one point I had this misdiagnosis and I thought I was going to die soon or whatever. And then they said, oh yeah, and by the way, your body will fall apart and you'll have dementia. And I got a little scared. In fact, I got quite nervous about it. And I talked to him. I said, I sat in the charnel grounds in the monastery with bodies that were burning and did all these death practices. I thought I was cool with death. But then this came along and then they threw in dementia. And Ramdas looked at me, he said, oh yeah, I've flunked the course a few times, like relax, it's just being human, because the body has its own, it wants to live. But the reason I tell the Miami story is that it's true for you. It becomes a kind of deeper resource when you meditate to be able to actually center yourself in the midst of the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of life. And you know how to do it because you discover that awareness is big enough to hold it all. Mindful, loving awareness you can step back and become the space of awareness that holds the unbearable beauty and the ocean of tears and says, yes, this is our human life. This is what we're born into. The heart is big enough to hold it. Awareness is big enough to hold it. And in some way, then you become what Ajahn Chah called the one who knows, the person who has wisdom in the heart. A couple more things to note from this and from that story in Miami. It's never too late to start again. In some way, the whole game of practice is to, as Suzuki Roshi said, the goal is to have beginner's mind, to be able to start, be present, be fresh, and to start all over again. So the redemption, whether it's from Easter or whether it's Passover, and the interesting thing in the Passover service, which is sort of overlaps with Easter because they were originally quite connected, is that in the Passover service, you speak in the first person in the present tense, and you say, I was a slave in Egypt. Sorry to the Egyptians in the room, this is metaphorical, believe me. But I was a slave and I have been freed. And when you understand it in the poetic and metaphorical sense, it's saying this is our human lot. We can be caught in our fear, in our confusion, in our sense of separateness, as Trudy said, and we can be free. And that's the deep invitation of meditation and redemption. And don't think it's not possible for you. You actually know it. You can be caught in all this stuff. You know you have. We know this about you. We can see it, right? Because we're human. And then there's that moment where you wake up and you go, wow, I'm really caught in this, aren't I? The anger, the fear, whatever the story is, and so forth. That moment is really the revelation that who you are is not the stuff you get caught in. You are conscious, your awareness, having a human experience and saying, wow, this is an extraordinary thing. Wade Davis, a famous explorer, said, despair, feeling like you can't do it, despair, is an insult to the imagination. I mean, especially in these tough times, this is a really important teaching. Despair is an insult to the imagination. And by imagination, he really means the deep knowing of the heart, that you are free and that we are free to create a better world, and it comes out of us and from us in the most deep and beautiful way. And I remember my teacher Ajahn Chah in the forest monastery, people would come to him with all kinds of problems. My child died, you know, my farm, my house burned down. I've been drafted, I have to go into the war. I've got a diagnosis, or I'm sitting in meditation and I feel like, I've hit a place where everything's out of control and I'm terrified, or so other kinds of problems. Or, I'm sitting in meditation and I dissolve my body into light. What do I do now, right? Or somebody who comes as this great philanthropist. What do I do with all this money that I just inherited? Didn't matter. And he would sit back, he'd smile. The Dharma was the medicine of ethical, moral living, to not cause harm, not cause harm through words and deeds. The Dharma was the medicine of compassion, to see all beings want to be happy. And even when I do metta, I'm doing a year of metta practice, I can do metta even for the worst characters in our public world. I can wish, and you fill in the name, we have the names, may you be free from fear. May you be free from hatred. May you be free from pain and suffering. I can wish that for anybody. And so the medicine of the Dharma says, where you are, this is the place that compassion can grow, that freedom is available to you through your practice. And what we're doing in that way is establishing the world that we want to see, and establishing ourselves in that place of love and wisdom and trust. Despair is an insult to the imagination that there is something that's possible for us. And we know it, it's so clear that no amount of computers and technology and internet and AI and biotechnology and space technology is going to stop continuing warfare and stop climate change and stop racism and stop tribalism and so forth, because they're all born in the human heart. And so the outer developments of humanity, now connected as we are, have to be matched by the inner developments. We have to be able to live in this world and not expect the outer to solve it, because it comes from the human heart. So the work that you do here, to be that person who can navigate through the ups and downs and the joys and sorrows, also is your gift to the world. And to be able to be at InsightLA and come back together as a community, so we support each other and clap when we're doing our jump rope or whatever, that there's some way we need each other to do this. And what a better thing to do on Easter, and to come in renewal all together as we have. So thank you.
We rise.
We rise. We rise.